So today, we're going to explore the vital role of smallholder farmers and the way that they are shaping the future of food systems across the Asia-Pacific region and also here at home in Australia. Because there's really no future of food without smallholder farmers. Food is much more than sustenance. It's about culture, community, livelihoods, prosperity, and connection to the land. From farm to table, smallholders and First Nations knowledge provide the backbone of strong communities, nurturing the land and feeding our shared future. So, as you just heard, organizations like IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, are building a bright future for sustainable and secure food systems in the Asia-Pacific region. At the same time, we have chefs and farmers changing the farming and cultural landscape of food here in Australia. So, to join today's discussion, I have two leaders in the field. They're really change makers who've come forward with solutions to give us really a positive future. So please welcome the President of IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, Alvaro Lario, and author and General Manager of Magners Farm, Kylie Woodham Magner. Welcome. So let me begin. Lario, welcome to Australia. I want you to start by telling us about IFAD and how IFAD uniquely supports smallholder farmers and what kind of an impact is it having in the world and in the region.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. As you said, Glenn, thank you for the invitation. It's my first time in Australia. I discovered Vegemite, which I think is a very important product for many of you. And I'm still a little bit jet-lagged, but I'm coming from the Solomon Islands, where I was meeting with the Prime Minister and seeing some of our projects in the region. And I would say that one of the things that we are really proud of is when the projects conclude that there's the sustainability aspect, that many of the changes in the communities change. As an example, in one of these projects, when I was in Malaita, one of the police officers actually mentioned that what he had seen after the project had ended is that a lot of the young people had more hope, that they were seeing the possibility of generating some income, and that also crime had really come down. So it's also about transforming rural communities. It's about making sure that we address inequality. And in the case specifically of the Pacific, I would say that for us is the triple threat of food security and nutrition. So overnutrition, malnutrition, undernutrition, and this is a big component. We operate in the whole world, but for us the Pacific is a very important part of our focus.
Thank you. And shifting to Australia, Kylie, you are a smallholder farmer. You practice what many others preach. So would you tell us a little bit about Magners Farm and really give us a sense of what this means, not just here in Australia, but how can it contribute to global initiatives like IFAD in terms of sustainable agriculture?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I mean, we see ourselves as a tiny fish in a very big ocean. Magners Farm started in Ireland in 2017, where we began a certified regenerative farm. I'm now farming in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales, where we produce eggs and pasture-range pork and vegetables that we grow in our very tiny holding, very small holding. What's important for us is that we are very much part of our community. We feed the people around us, and the food that we feed them is incredibly nutritious. We employ regenerative practices which are very kind to the land, and I think earlier when we learned about the First Nations people and their connection to country, we feel that very strongly too, that we are really just custodians of the land. And as smallholders, we feel small, but we're feeding our community.
So that's great, but why aren't more Australian farmers following these regenerative practices that you are practicing? What's holding them back?
Well, I think the common theme in regenerative agriculture is the biggest problem is between the ears. So people are financially constrained. They've always done it in a particular way. But in saying that, Australia is one of the leaders in sustainable agriculture. So because we live in a very dry, arid continent, we have adapted, as First Nations people also have, in getting more from the land with less resources. So people are adopting these practices, and what results is better for the environment and better for the people. So people are adopting the practices, but a lot of the time there are financial constraints which restrict them from doing that, or that they have a family who has already done it or always done it in a particular way, using herbicides and pesticides.
Maybe IFAD should work in Australia as well. Is that a possibility?
Well, we don't work in high-income countries. Usually our focus is low-income, low-middle-income countries. That's where most of our practices are. But I think coming back to regenerative agriculture, we saw for the first time at the last climate conference in COP that actually there was a joint leaders declaration by more than 150 countries where it was recognized that actually climate and food come together. It seemed up to now it was two separate tracks, that they didn't have nothing to do, but actually they obviously do. And we have to always remember that farming is a business. So it also needs access to credit, access to finance, access to jobs, access to value chains, to markets, decent pricing, and that's something that sometimes we tend to forget.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about the challenges that farmers face in these times of climate change? And you know, you've just come from the Pacific, and this is a huge challenge across the islands of the Pacific. So how can IFAD make a difference to those communities, to those farmers in those communities?
So the challenges in the Pacific, as you said, they are manifold. I think from one side you have nutrition, but also just because of the geography, the scale, but also the type of extreme weather events you see. I was with the Minister of Finance of Tonga and with the King of Tonga during COP, and actually the sea level rise during the last year has been 11 centimeters. They didn't believe it. They had just to recheck many times, because imagine what type of threat that poses. The same goes with trying to, for example, support many of the communities through planting of mangroves as a way of looking at water management and seeing how. I was right now, for example, in the Solomon Islands, and one of the things was obviously, even though it has a lot of rain, it's also water management, and how can you make sure that it's available when you need it. It's not only about grain-fed agriculture, but also about water management itself. If you talk about other areas of the world, like the Sahel, or you have a lot of seasons of droughts, 5 years without any rain, so that also makes it much more difficult. And the only way to produce it, it's a matter of soil, it's a matter of water, and then you have all of the business components, but without the right soil, the right access to water, it will not work.
Great. So just one last comment, Kylie. You know, why should Australians care about regenerative smallholder farming? Just in a nutshell, what should this audience take away?
Everybody eats.
Correct.
And I think that's probably one piece that people forget about: where does the food come from? Where is your food coming from? And it can either come from a positive source or it doesn't. So regenerative agriculture is one where it comes from us being connected to the earth, to our community, and to improving the land for the people that come after us. So we don't see it as an asset. We see it as as something that we are part of. So, I mean, I think everybody here today, whether you're a farmer or you're not a farmer, you're all connected somehow to the land because you eat. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's probably a concise way of finishing up from my end. Yeah.
We'll all remember that for sure. So, finally, Alvaro, what should global citizens really be concerned about going forward when it comes to smallholder farming and regional food security? What would you like them to take away?
Well, first, that the trajectory is very alarming. So we are seeing that since COVID, more than 120 million people have fallen back into food insecurity and into poverty. And I go to many of the projects we have all over the world, and sometimes it's difficult to come back to our regular society in the developed world, because actually the type of support that many of these communities have is very little. So for us, it's investments in having the opportunity of many of these people to really lead a decent livelihood. For us, it's about, I mean, when I have never seen a rural woman or a rural man that actually does not want their children to have better access to education, to have some savings, to be able to have a job whereby they are able to lead a decent life. Many of my conversations actually right now in the Solomon Islands, but has been throughout the world, is with mothers, especially talking about how they are so grateful of having an additional income to be able to send their children to school. So agriculture, and especially I would say in rural areas, it's a lifeline. It's a way for them of really having an opportunity of having a decent livelihood and also of coming out of poverty. Unfortunately, because of COVID, what I have seen throughout the world is that many of the farmers, and especially the small farmers, had to choose between actually continuing planting or eating at certain moments in time because of the price of fertilizers, because of many times the extreme weather events they were going through. And that's quite dramatic. And I think we cannot live in a world where 1 out of 10 people are actually in poverty and food insecure.
Correct. Well, this is truly inspiring. Unfortunately, we have to bring this panel to a close, but I would really encourage everyone here to learn more about IFAD, the great work they're doing, learn more about entrepreneur practitioners like Kylie, who are really changing the landscape of our food system through investing in smallholder agriculture. So with that, please join me in thanking our panelists for their sharing their insights and perspectives. Thank you.